11:47 p.m. A quiet street. A man standing behind a curtain, phone raised, recording something no one was ever supposed to see. 41 seconds. That's all it took to capture a murder in real time, start to finish, on a $1,500 smartphone through a rain-streaked bedroom window. And then, less than 15 minutes later, it was gone. Deleted. Not lost, not corrupted. Erased. On purpose. By the only living witness to what happened in that driveway. For 3 weeks, investigators had a body, a motive they couldn't confirm, and a neighborhood full of people who swore they'd seen nothing. What they didn't know was that somewhere, on a server none of them had thought to check, 41 seconds of truth were still sitting there, waiting. This is the story of the video that was never supposed to survive, and the neighbor who thought deleting it would be the end of the story, instead of the beginning. Maple Hollow Court was the kind of street real estate listings describe as family-friendly, without a hint of irony. A cul-de-sac, matching mailboxes, a faded neighborhood watch sign nobody took seriously. Because on Maple Hollow Court, nothing ever happened. At the end of the block lived Daniel Reyes, 34 years old, a night shift warehouse supervisor, known around the block for 2 things: chronic insomnia and the telescope permanently angled out of his upstairs bedroom window. Officially, it was for stargazing. Unofficially, most of his neighbors joked that Daniel simply liked knowing what was happening on his street before anyone else did. Directly across from him lived the Hensleys. Mark, 41, a mid-level finance manager with a reputation for a short temper, and his wife Claire, 38, a school teacher known for keeping to herself. Behind their attached garage sat an ordinary concrete driveway, the kind you'd walk past 1,000 times without a second glance. On the night of October 9th, that driveway would become a crime scene. Daniel didn't know any of this yet. He only knew he couldn't sleep again. So he did what he always did on nights like this. He picked up his phone, sat by the window, and started scrolling. Then he heard the first raised voice outside, and out of nothing more than habit, he lifted his phone toward the glass. At first, it was just noise, raised voices, a car door slamming shut a little too hard. Daniel assumed it was the Hensleys again. The couple had a well-known history of arguments that spilled from the kitchen out onto the front lawn. But this time was different. Mark Hensley wasn't shouting at his wife. He was shouting at a man Daniel didn't recognize. Tall, hooded, standing beside a dark sedan parked crookedly at the curb, its engine still idling, headlights off. Daniel's thumb found the record button almost without thinking. 41 seconds began to roll. What that camera captured next would later be described by lead investigator Detective Marla Voss as, quote, the most disturbing 41 seconds this department has reviewed in over a decade. A shove, then another, harder. A struggle near the trunk of the sedan, and then a glint of something metal catching the dull orange of the porch light. And then, stillness. One man standing, one man on the ground, not moving. Daniel lowered the phone. His hands, he would later tell police, were shaking so violently he nearly dropped it into the bushes below. He had just filmed a murder. And in the 11 minutes that followed, he would make a decision that changed everything. For the case, and for himself. Here is where this case splits from almost every other true crime story you've heard. Daniel didn't call 911. He didn't wake his wife sleeping down the hall. Instead, he sat frozen on the edge of his bed for 11 minutes, a timeline we now know precisely thanks to his phone's internal activity log, staring at 41 seconds of footage that could put a killer behind bars for the rest of his life. And then he deleted it. Not the recording on any server, just the copy in front of him, the only copy he believed existed. He'd later claim it was panic, fear that the man in the hoodie had glanced up during the struggle and caught the pale glow of a phone screen behind an upstairs window. Fear of becoming a target instead of a witness. But there was one detail Daniel never volunteered to police that night, or in the weeks that followed. He knew the victim. And more than that, he knew the man in the hoodie, too. It was Claire Hensley who ultimately dialed 911, 19 minutes after the altercation began, after stepping outside to find her husband unresponsive at the base of the driveway. By the time paramedics arrived, Mark Hensley had already been declared dead at the scene. Within the hour, patrol officers were canvassing Maple Hollow Court door to door, standard procedure for a homicide in a residential neighborhood. When they reached Daniel Reyes's front porch, he told them exactly what he thought they wanted to hear. He'd heard some shouting, sure, everyone on the block had, but he'd seen nothing. No altercation, no stranger, no idling sedan at the curb. It was a small lie, the kind homicide detectives hear constantly from witnesses who simply don't want to get involved in something that isn't theirs. But small lies in murder investigations have an ugly habit of unraveling, and this one was about to.
3 weeks into a stalling investigation, no eyewitnesses, no weapon, no confirmed suspect. A digital forensics analyst working the case made a discovery that would change the entire trajectory of the file. Daniel's phone, like millions of others, automatically backed up to the cloud every night at exactly midnight, 12 minutes before he deleted the video from his device. The footage he believed he had destroyed forever was sitting untouched, fully intact, on an encrypted server hundreds of miles from Maple Hollow Court. Detectives secured a warrant within 48 hours. What they recovered wasn't just 41 seconds of a killing playing out in grainy nighttime detail. It was a clear, unobstructed shot of the killer's face, turned directly toward the streetlight in the final seconds of the struggle. The man in the hoodie was identified as Ray Colton, a former business partner of Mark Hensley's. The two had been locked in a bitter, escalating dispute over a failed investment for more than a year, one that had reportedly cost Colton nearly everything he owned. But the recovered footage exposed something far more damaging than just Colton's identity. Phone records pulled during the digital forensics review showed that Daniel Reyes had exchanged text messages with Ray Colton earlier that very night. Messages that appeared to tip Colton off about Mark Hensley's habit of stepping into the driveway late at night to take private phone calls. Daniel hadn't simply been a panicked bystander who happened to catch a tragedy on camera. He was a man protecting himself from being tied to the very confrontation he had filmed with his own hands. At trial, the recovered 41 seconds became the prosecution's centerpiece, played twice, in total silence, before a jury of 12. It was enough. Ray Colton was convicted of second-degree murder. Daniel Reyes was charged separately for obstruction of justice and tampering with evidence in a homicide investigation. Facing the weight of the recovered cloud data and his own text messages, he accepted a plea deal. 18 months. Today, the Hensley house sits empty. Claire moved out of state within the year, unable to walk past the driveway where her husband bled out beneath a porch light, while a neighbor watched from behind glass. Daniel Reyes served his sentence quietly and has never spoken publicly about that night. About the 11 minutes he sat frozen on the edge of his bed, phone in hand, deciding exactly what 41 seconds of footage was worth to him. What this case leaves behind isn't just a conviction. It's a question investigators say echoes through cases like this far more often than people realize. What do you do when you witness the unthinkable And the safest choice doesn't feel like speaking up, but disappearing. Daniel Reyes chose to disappear. The cloud remembered anyway. If this case kept you here until the very end, subscribe for more true crime stories that prove the truth always finds a way to resurface. And tell me in the comments, would you have made a different choice than Daniel did that night on Maple Hollow Court?